everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Introducing Color Congress. My name is Sahar Driver. I use she, her pronouns, and I am co-director of the newly formed Color Congress. I am really grateful to be here with all of you today, and I hope wherever you are, you and all of your loved ones are each holding strong, keeping healthy in this moment. I am an Iranian American woman with long brown hair that is currently in a braid. I am wearing a light brown top with gold hoop earrings and clear rimmed glasses. And I'm sitting against a virtual background that is of a magenta multi-toned textile with the words Color Congress and white lettering hanging out in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. I am speaking to you from unceded Muwekma and Ohlone land in what is also known as Oakland, California. I name this to recognize and honor the history and enduring presence of Indigenous peoples in all the lands where we're living and working, and to invite engagement with Indigenous struggles for land, water, and life in all of our communities. I invite you to enter into the chat box the Indigenous nations whose lands you're joining from. I should mention that this conversation features live captioning and ASL. Thank you to Andrea Lust and Ashley McHenry, who are providing ASL interpretation. We're also providing live closed captioning. Thank you to Karen Schmieder, who is providing that service. To access that on a desktop, click the CC button at the bottom of the window. And if you're on a mobile device, you can click more with the 3 dots. And in the drop-down menu, you will find closed captioning as an option. We would be remiss to begin today's session without acknowledging the pain that so many members of the POC documentary community have experienced due to the curation at Sundance this year. While we respect and love our colleagues at Sundance Institute who are working hard to make our sector a place where films authored by filmmakers from Black or African American, Indigenous, Latinx, Pacific Islander, Asian, Arab, Middle Eastern, and Muslim communities are valued and showcased, we also know the festival itself has competing interests that are not always aligned with our community's needs. We're launching here at Sundance because we hope to spread the word about the grant opportunity and uplift why we started this organization, what we hope to contribute to the field, and these persistently overlooked organizations on whose shoulders we stand to the widest audience possible. And moving forward, we'll be shifting our focus to meet our community where you already are.
Thank you, Sahar. My name is Sonya Childress. I'm really excited to be with you today and welcome you all to our conversation. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm joining you today from the unceded lands of the Tongva people in Southern California. I am an African American and Puerto Rican woman with long locks, brown skin, tortoise shell glasses, gold earrings, a gold necklace that says the word dog on it, a white top, and I'm sitting against a vibrant magenta African wax print. So in addition to sharing our vision for the Color Congress, today and I'm so excited about this, we will begin to tell the story of the rich legacy of people of color and led and serving organizations in the documentary field. And it is this ecosystem that Color Congress was born from within, and it is this ecosystem that we aim to serve. And helping us tell this story today is our board of advisors, people whose own work exemplifies the deep and rich leadership folks of color have provided to the documentary sector for decades. And they are Cornelius Moore, Tracy Rector, Chiwe Young, Kiyoshi Ken Ikeda, Tara Dorabji, Andres Sediel, and in spirit with us today is Chloe Walters Wallace. So you came to the Sundance Film Festival, and typically we spend our time at festivals lifting up the work of individual filmmakers. But we know that no film is made in isolation. And for many filmmakers of color, it is the champions behind the scenes that truly make this artistry possible. So today we are lifting up those champions, the many people and the organizations they created that have given so much to our field and to our communities. We honor today their commitment to nurturing talented storytellers, for reminding us that our voices matter, that we are experts in our own experiences, that we are the legitimate witnesses to our own histories, that we are the audiences of our films, and that we are the partners who make sure our films are seen, understood, valued, and used. We honor the people who have laid the foundations upon which our communities are seen and cared for cinematically. So today we're shifting our gaze away from the spaces where we have had to fight to be seen and heard, and instead we're turning inward, and we are celebrating the brilliance in our midst. So with that, we want to know who all's with us today. So please introduce ourselves. We love seeing your names, and continue to introduce yourselves to us in the room. And as questions come up during the conversation, please use the question functionality to drop them in the box, and we'll get to them at the end of our conversation. Sahar?
Thanks, Sonya. So, for decades, people of color have created collectives, festivals, production companies, marketing and impact organizations, and other groups to serve storytellers, audiences, and leadership of color in documentary. Many of them grew out of the political turmoil of the 60s and the 70s, survived the culture wars of the 80s, and vacillating public support for nonfiction. They saw the rise of independent organizations serving the field, and now the era of commercial media and the streamers. While many organizations historically led by white colleagues have programming for diverse filmmakers, we know that organizations that are led by people who are Black and or of African American, Indigenous, Latinx, Pacific Islander, Asian, Arab, and Middle Eastern descent, with all of their beautiful intersections, consistently offer vital support for their communities in this field. And they serve as gateways for other people of color to enter too, no matter what direction the political winds blow, because it's foundational to what they do. We believe the story of this ecosystem, as Sonya said, needs to be shared and understood by the wider field. And we think that learning why and how organizations that make up this ecosystem came to be, the way their commitments have overlapped, and how powerful leadership and beautiful storytelling was made possible by it is an appropriate starting point for our work. So today we want to tell a small piece of history as we celebrate the individuals and organizations on whose shoulders we stand. People who have given so much of themselves to their peers and to the field. This really is only a small part of the story, and there is so much more to tell. And there's a lot we still need to learn and uncover. So we invite you in the days and weeks to come to send us an email if you know a piece of this history that we missed or that you want to make sure doesn't get lost. We do see it as part of our mission to learn and share these stories. And for now, I will pass the mic to our friend Cornelius, who will kick us off.
Thank you, Sahar. Greetings, everybody. I'm Cornelius Moore, as Sahar said, and I'm happy to be here. I am a curator, co-director of California Newsreel, and advisory board member of Color Congress. I'm joining you from San Francisco, land of the unceded land of the Ohlone people, and I'm a Black man, brown skin, bald-headed, with allergies, wearing a dark gray sweater, and behind me is the vibrant background that Sonya described. So we share that. I'm going to share some history about Blackside Productions, their groundbreaking storytelling that they produce, and also about the leaders it helped to develop. Founded in Boston in 1968 by African-American filmmaker Henry Hampton, Blackside Productions became one of the largest minority-owned non-theatrical film production companies in the US during the 1970s until Henry Hampton's death in 1998. Hampton was a witness to the voting rights campaign in Selma, Alabama in 1965, and it was something that inspired him to produce the monumental series Eyes on the Prize. This 14-part series chronicled the civil rights movement from 1954 to 1985, from the voices of everyday participants, and also featured every major figure involved. So in other words, the people who are actually there are a big part of this series. And this was at a time when much of the scholarship about the civil rights movement had yet to be written. The series set quite a bar for historical documentaries and remains one of the most influential works made in the US. And there were other memorable productions coming from the Henry Hampton organization, and including the Great Depression, Malcolm X Make It Plain, America's War on Poverty, This Far by Faith, and I'll Make Me a World. As an executive producer, Hampton hired filmmakers who would later become leaders in academia, philanthropy, as well as public and commercial media. And I'll give you some examples. Judy Richardson, who had been an activist in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, went on to make other films on the civil rights movement, as well as to steward the legacy of SNCC in books and on digital platforms, and making it available to a wider public and to today's activists. Orlando Bagwell, he went on to found Just Films at the Ford Foundation, which today is a vital supporter of independent documentaries. Later, he became director of the documentary program at the University of California, Berkeley School of Journalism, training another generation of nonfiction filmmakers. Callie Crosby went on to ABC News and now hosts a public radio program, Under the Radar, where she continues to focus on overlooked news of concern to communities of color. And Nolan Walker went on to become the vice president of content at the Independent Television Service, or ITVS, managing a portfolio of programs, including the Independent Lens series. And Tracy Heather Strain founded her own company, the Film Posse, and is now chair of film studies at Wesleyan University, and is developing a documentary program there. And then there's Denise Green, who works with Black Public Media. And last but not least, Louis Messiah, who in 1982 founded the Scribe Video Center in Philadelphia. And Scribe is a much needed space of access and training for emerging filmmakers, offering a pathway into the industry. It's also a very vital resource for documenting community history for and by the community. So I'll close with saying, so you can see that Henry Hampton's company paved the way for so many filmmakers and leaders, particularly Black folks, committed to a diversity of voices in nonfiction storytelling. Thank you for listening, and I'm going to pass it on now to Chiwe Yang. Chiwe.
Thanks, Cornelius. Hi, everyone. I'm Chiwe Yang, he, him. I'm calling in from Lenape Land in Brooklyn, New York. I am a curator and also a senior program officer at the Ford Foundation in this Just Films program, also advisory member for Color Congress. I'm an Asian American man with shoulder-length hair, black glasses, and I'm wearing a brown jacket. It's a pleasure to share a bit of the history of the Third World Newsreel and the important role it's played in today's nonfiction ecosystem. And I know many folks here are familiar with Third World Newsreel. It is a media arts center founded in 1967 in New York City by a collective of filmmakers. You know, it emerged out of a lot of the progressive social movements at the time that were related to anti-war and liberation movements. And in 1973, Christine Choi and Susan Robeson became the first directors of color at Newsreel, transforming it into a majority POC staff. And, you know, and like other organizations that were being founded at that time, like Asian Cinevision and Visual Communications, it was thinking seriously about the political nature of media making, and was a critical space for activists really pushing back on the distortions they were seeing of particular communities in the media. And, Third World Newsreel, as a media arts center, laid the blueprint for many other organizations to come, as well as the blueprint for what are today the film institutes, what have evolved into what are the film institutes, alongside many other media arts organizations that still are working today. Third World Newsreel provided a range of services for filmmakers: funding, distribution, fiscal sponsorships, training, equipment rentals, and their focus was explicitly on low-income folks, women, and individuals of color. And so many filmmakers have been supported by Third World Newsreel. Let's look at a roll call of many of our most significant filmmakers: Charles Burnett, Lourdes Portillo, Julie Dash, Raoul Peck, Christine Choi, Renee Tashma Pena, Grace Lee. Films like Who Killed Vincent Chin, all the way to Grace Lee's recent And She Could Be Next. So much significant folks have passed through Third World Newsreel. And many organizations have been formed through those folks that were supported by Newsreel, including ADOC and Asian Cinevision's Asian American Film Festival. For myself, I worked for many years at the Center for Asian American Media, another media arts center that was really influenced by the legacy of Third World Newsreel. And today we can see many other organizations that are equally influenced by that legacy, from Beyond Inclusion, which is a collective to build POC leadership in the industry, all the way to the Undocumented Filmmakers Collective, who are advocating for undocumented filmmakers. And we hope the work of these new collectives and many of the organizations that have been around for many years who are still working today continue to flourish. I'm happy to share that bit of history about Third World Newsreel and many other tentacles and many other modes of influence that the organization has found over the years. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Tracy Rector.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Tracy Rector, and I go by she, her pronouns. I'm the Managing Director of Storytelling at Mia Tarot. I'm a mixed heritage, medium-skinned, brown-skinned woman with hair that goes past my shoulders. It's dark, and I have a silver streak. I'm joining you today from the traditional homelands of the Puyallup peoples, and it's a pleasure to share a bit of the history of the National Multicultural Alliance, formerly called the National Minority Consortia, and why it's not enough to resource filmmakers of color and their storytelling, but also the institutions are publicly mandated to make sure they reach audiences of color. The National Multicultural Alliance, which is made up of Black Public Media, Center for Asian American Media, Latino Public Broadcasting, Pacific Islanders and Communication, and Vision Maker Media. They all provide vital resources and support to BIPOC filmmakers, media leaders, and BIPOC stories. For half a century, these orgs have served as anchors for many of the organizations you've heard about today, providing unwavering support for filmmakers of color through funding, advocacy, and distribution pipeline through public media. This includes an org you've all heard about, Firelight Media, which was founded by Stanley Nelson and Marcia Smith in 1998 as a small production company that has since turned into a powerful leadership incubator. Firelight has produced 12 films and supported over 100 filmmakers and impact producers like myself since its funding. I too was a beneficiary of Firelight programming, as I mentioned before, as an impact producer, like so many others. And two of my peers in that fellowship program went on to found the Undocumented Filmmaker Collective, which you just heard about. But Firelight Media would not be what it is without the support of Black Public Media, which not only provided support and seed funding to Stanley Nelson, but also supported Nelson's own mentor, Bill Graves. Thank you so much. I'll pass it now to Tara.
Thank you so much, Tracy. It's such an honor to be here with all of you today, and also to really uncover and listen to this legacy of incredible BIPOC institutions and leaders, and really see that network of relationships. And my name is Tara Durabji, she, her. I'm a filmmaker, mom, the vice president at the Center for Cultural Power, and on the advisory board for Color Congress. And I have long brown hair. I'm a South Asian American, wearing some abalone earrings. I have a side part, a blue shirt, and a black jacket. And I'm joining you from my kitchen, though you can't see it because of this beautiful background on unceded Ohlone land. And I'm really deeply honored today to shine a light on the important role of the Queer Women of Color Media Arts Project, known as QuackMap. And while many of the groups we've been discussing have been in the national spotlight, QuackMap is really instrumental here in the Bay Area and has served as a lifeline for many filmmakers. It's the very type of organization that the Color Congress was created to nurture and build and support. QuackMap fosters storytelling by, for, and about queer women of color, cisgender, transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people of color of any orientation. And QuackMap offers locally relevant, community-based storytelling that is vital to healing, leveraging the transformative power documentary film can offer. For 2 decades, they have brought us films like Worlds of Bernice Bing, a tribute to Chinese American Buddhist, feminist, lesbian artist, activist who was at the forefront of the SF North Beach beat scene at a time when lesbian was a bad word and women were expected to stand on the sideline. QuackMap spent the last 22 years building a pipeline to support incredible leaders here in the Bay Area. Folks like Jay Gash, who runs the Bridges Fellowship and Next Gen program at Bay Area Video Coalition, got their start at QuackMap and now are supporting the next generation of media makers. And Narissa Lee, who has been telling award-winning stories about Bay Area communities and social justice issues like climate chaos. Her work was supported by QuackMap, and she continues to build international solidarity to disrupt the current social disorder. And also Storm Miguel Flores, who is a Bay Area filmmaker supported by QuackMap and who is actually part of Sundance's Trans Filmmaker Initiative this year. And these are just a few of the incredible creatives that come out of QuackMap, filmmakers who bring their whole selves to their practice, creating pipelines and platforms for others in their community to build from. We are so incredibly lucky to have QuackMap here in the Bay Area, showing us what it truly means to create stories from and by the community. And with that, I'll pass it back to Sonya.
Thank you, Tara. My goodness. I want to just have everyone both just take in these words, these stories, these anecdotes for a moment and let these stories sort of wash over you. And if we could see the next slide, I'd like you now to take in the beautiful constellation of BIPOC-led and serving organizations in our documentary community. Again, this is just a snippet of a very long story that we have been telling for decades in this country. And we are just in this storytelling, just scratching the surface of the contributions that people of color have made to our field, obviously as filmmakers, but also as leaders, as curators, as funders, as critics, as strategists, as professors, as gate openers, as cheerleaders, and as mentors. When we say it takes a village, we are starting to visibilize the village that births and supports the incredible filmmakers in our midst. So I just want to give you all a minute to take this in. Pretty, right? It is our mission at Color Congress to lift up this history so that the contributions of these people and their organizations are cemented into the history of our field. And we encourage you to keep shouting out the names of people and organizations who influenced you, who are in this constellation. We're going to be sharing the slides from today's presentation on our website, and we're going to continue to populate this image so that it truly reflects the diversity within our full community. So please keep shouting out those names, and we're going to be pulling things from the chat. So one other place where the legacy of these organizations was captured was in the groundbreaking report released in 2019 called Beyond Inclusion: The Critical Role of People of Color in the Documentary Ecosystem. That report was commissioned by the Ford Foundation, Just Films, and researched and written by our very own Sahar Driver. And I hope you've had a chance to take a look at it. We've just dropped the link in the chat if you haven't, but it provided an overview of close to 200 nonfiction film organizations in the US and territories, some that are led by and serving people of color, and some that that have programming that serves people of color. It looks at their impact in shaping a more equitable documentary sector and how these organizations advance social justice filmmaking. And a key takeaway, if you read the report, is that while there are many POC filmmakers serving programs that are housed at historically white-led institutions, some of which do incredible work in our community, it is the historically POC-led and serving organizations with explicit commitments to supporting the authorship of POC filmmakers who have sustained this commitment over time, despite the winds of change in our cultural environment. These organizations were created and built around POC filmmaking authorship. But more importantly, this report visibilized the distinct contributions these organizations make to the field. And when we talk about the organizations that are POC-led and serving in the United States and territories, we're talking about a group of entities. Some are really informal collectives, and some are very well-known nonprofit organizations and festivals. But the number of organizations we're talking about is roughly around 90. So that's the ecosystem that we are naming today. And as we heard earlier from our board of advisors, these organizations serve as vital training grounds for leaders and gateways for storytellers of color to enter the industry. And because, as you heard, many of these groups emerged out of justice and liberation movements, core values of equity, of duty of care, of a commitment to prioritizing diverse audiences, of a desire for storytelling to affect real material change. All of these values are often part of the DNA of these organizations, and those values continue to be passed on to generations of leaders and storytellers. And yet, despite their outsized contributions to the field, these groups often operate below the radar of national recognition and below the radar of national funding. Most of these groups receive a fraction of the funding of their white-led peer organizations. So, reading the report, you had to imagine the potential of this ecosystem if it were resourced at the level it merits. And so this data really urged us to make real commitments to the longevity and sustainability and the potential of this important ecosystem. And so Color Congress, as a funding entity and as a field building intervention, emerged from that research. So we really encourage you, if you're trying to get your head around what the Color Congress aims to do and why it was created, taking a look at that research is an important step. And like I said, we believe this ecosystem of POC-led and serving documentary organizations can be an incredible force for change, not just in our field, but in our democracy. But to get there, we have to come together. And we know there is real power in collective organizing and problem solving. And we're seeing evidence of that all across our field today. We're in the moment, as much as we're in the commercial era of documentary films, we are also in the era of collective organizing. But many of the organizations we're talking about in our ecosystem operate with few resources, some with volunteer teams. And so there's little bandwidth to reach out to other organizations to begin to build trust and power. So we envision Color Congress as a space for that vital connection, for skill sharing and power building. And this spring, we will share more about how the Congress will function as a new representative body for these organizations. And we will be encouraging all BIPOC-led and serving documentary entities in the US and territories to join the Color Congress. Membership will be free, unless you want to throw something my way, but membership will be free. And organizations will gather monthly online to share experiences, to discuss common challenges, to propose solutions to those challenges. And this summer, they will be able to direct a new pot of funding to resource those solutions. So we're really excited about the potential of pulling this ecosystem together. And if you know of an organization in your local community that should know about this initiative, that could be part of this Congress, please direct them to our website and ask them to sign up to our newsletter so they can hear the news when we announce that this spring. But first, we have an announcement about our first fund, and Sahar is going to share that with you.
Thanks, Sonia. I will say it is so beautiful to read this chat, and it's really really warming my heart. So thank you to everybody. I love seeing all these names come through. Yeah, the announcement is not going to be new to anyone who's been following, but on Friday, we opened the application process for a fund of 1.35 million that we will distribute as 2-year unrestricted grants to organizations that are serving the least resourced communities and regions that experience funding droughts, organizations that are critical to the communities they serve, but that operate with the smallest budgets. And the fund is so that they can continue their core work, continue to sustain their core work. We will begin, we'll be hosting an FAQ webinar on Monday to answer all of your questions about this. That's Monday the 31st. It'll be at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, which I believe is 9 a.m. in Hawaii and 3 p.m. in Puerto Rico. And later this summer, we will announce a second fund to support the collective needs of this ecosystem, the use of which is going to be determined by the Color Congress membership itself. But for now, you can learn more about the open call for the 2-year unrestricted grants at our website. And I think there's going to be, Andrea just linked the Eventbrite, so you can RSVP to join the FAQ webinar if you like. I should say that this fund is one response to a consistent message I heard when speaking to leaders of color for the Beyond Inclusion report that Ford commissioned, which is that despite important efforts to diversify leadership at documentary institutions, people of color continue to face cultural or structural barriers, whether their roles are in public media, commercial media, or nonprofit organizations. And what became clear is that it isn't enough to hire people of color at historically white-led institutions and expect that these institutions will become more hospitable or accountable to communities of color, certainly not as quickly as we need them to. What we learned is that all leaders of color, whether they are moving up the ranks of historically white-led institutions or leading organizations based in communities of color, all of them need to be supported and provided with all of the tools they need to be successful without compromising their lens. We view the Color Congress as an intervention to bring more equity to the field and serve as a place where leaders of people of color-led documentary organizations can connect with one another, share insights, access new resources, and begin to build power together. We were planning to bring up Chloe Walters-Wallace, as Sonya mentioned at the top, who is Director of Regional Initiatives at Firelight Media and an advisory board member for Color Congress, to speak today about her experiences working with organizations all across the country, about why she believes in the intervention that Color Congress is making, but unfortunately she couldn't join us today. So instead, she sent something in for us to read, which I'm gonna go ahead and do. She says, hello, my name is Chloe Walters-Wallace. I am a filmmaker, director of regional initiatives at Firelight Media, and advisory board member for Color Congress. I am devastated to miss this inaugural moment in our industry, but first want to say how truly honored I am to be alongside Sonya, Sahar, my fellow advisory board and design committee members, who I deeply respect and admire. I have learned so much in 2 months, learnings I will take with me for the rest of my life. I bring this up because my brief experience has challenged, affirmed, and brought possibilities I didn't even imagine in a very short amount of time. And this act of each organization connecting not only to the resources and opportunities nationally, but most importantly, it provides the opportunity to connect them to each other. Across communities and geography, nurturing connections and integrating them into a collective ecosystem is going to reshape the industry to become more inclusive, more innovative, and more powerful. It will change all of us forever. It will strengthen their work. It will create a space where they can be seen, not just for recognition, but for understanding. It will create a seat at their own table for the smallest and largest BIPOC-led and serving organizations to advocate for each other. It will create an atmosphere of abundance versus lack. I've been thinking a lot about what dreams may come. I've been thinking a lot about Susu. I have spent the last 5 years running groundwork, working with organizations outside the poles of New York and California, organizations that play a vital role in their communities, but have the hardest time accessing national funds and lack the support to build connections with like-minded organizations outside of their regions. Organizations like Third Horizon in Miami, Florida, who serve Caribbean communities all over the country and the world through film, or Arab Indianapolis in Indiana, led by Dr. Edward Curtis, who has been documenting the history of Arab and Muslim presence since the 1800s in the Midwest, or the Center for Afrofuturist Studies in Iowa City, Iowa, who just completed a conference on Muslim futurism this month. And last but not least, the House of Pentacles in Durham, North Carolina, who is building foundational skills for Black trans filmmakers. Unrestricted grants set aside for these organizations is a game changer, especially without all of the heavy burden of reporting that national funders often need. Unrestricted makes dreams reality. Thank you for having me. That was beautiful words from Chloe Walters-Wallace. Thank you for this beautiful note. Now I'm going to pass the mic to Ken to talk about the potential he sees in collective organizing and what's at stake if we don't resource these organizations.
Hi, thank you, Sahar. It's great to be here. My name is Ken Ikeda. I'm a partner with Studio to Be, an executive producer for a number of podcasts, including Viewers Like Us, that examines PBS's commitment to diversity, and it's led by the amazing filmmaker Grace Lee, and Self-Evident, that believes you can no longer talk about what it means to be American without including the Asian American experience. Self-Evident was actually started by a generation of public media producers who were told to wait their turn by their bosses. They're pushed back with questions like, is there an audience for Asian American stories? Are there enough stories to justify a show? Well, this group, as a collective, decided that none of their bosses were ready or willing to give consideration to their vision or the waiting public, and set on our own to produce the show. So sorry for the little rant. I'm an advisory board member for Color Congress, and I'm joining you from the ever creative town of Oakland, California, on a lonely land. I'm wearing a black sweatshirt and a blue jacket. My headphones conceal a very awkward COVID-length ponytail. And I really want to just talk about why we need to support collective needs. Right? So questioning in isolation is not the same as asking questions as a community, as a collective. Am I good enough? Is it me? Is very different versus, are we not enough? Right? When we have each other, we will ask together. Very different. The last 5 years has seen a rise in collective organizing to push the industry toward equity, ethics, and justice. And many of these collectives are led by dynamic leaders of color who do this field work, building work without compensation, without recognition. They do it because they are directly impacted by the issues, lack of representation or misrepresentation. They do it because they've been told to wait their turn and to trust those empowered to deliver change. And as this country slides further into disrepair and democracy is at risk, and as commercial streamers gain more and more power to prioritize what sells, we need independent nonfiction storytelling now more than ever. So the people within this ecosystem have the solutions to the challenges that face them. They're closest to them. They are ready and they have the support and trust of the communities that they are working through. And we know that resources matter. And a new fund to help build connections among them to support collective needs and advocacy is long overdue. I can only manage very basic math, but I believe that community plus resources equal power. Community plus resources equals opportunity, equals possibility. And when you layer on courage, vision, readiness, and being sick and tired, well, we're into pre-calc. And this underscores why the launch of Color Congress is so timely and meaningful. So I'll pass the mic back to Sonya and Sahar.
I loved that, Ken. Community plus resources equals power. I couldn't, some of the calculus, but I could get the basic arithmetic of that. So thank you so much. It is now time to open up for Q&A, and we are really excited to hear from some of you. I know that some have started to drop questions in our question function box, and we're going to start to answer some of those questions and fill out some of the gaps in what we shared today, either about our large ecosystem or the work of the Color Congress. So thank you all for the love fest that's happening in the chat and for the good questions that are coming into the question box. So let's get going. We have a first question up from Anonymous. Which is a great question, a good clarifying question. Do you have to be an organization to participate? And Sahar, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, the intention of the Color Congress is to support the organizations that support the filmmakers because together they provide a really important infrastructure. So yeah, the grant is open and membership is open to organizations.
Great, thank you for that question. It's important to clarify. The next question came in from Anonymous. Will there be additional support for BIPOC organizations that may be smaller and less well connected in the industry? Leadership training, mentorship, and providing access to funders is so important for these smaller orgs. Also, will fiscally sponsored organizations be supported? The NEA doesn't provide funding for fiscally sponsored orgs, which is devastating. Lastly, will emerging leaders at these smaller orgs be supported? We talk about the future, but will young professionals also be supported? So there's a question there, Sahar, about smaller, less resourced orgs, if an org is fiscally sponsored, not a 501c3, And what kind of support are we offering to leaders?
Yeah, so the intention of the fund is to support the smallest and least connected organizations. So absolutely, that is our priority, to support those precise organizations in this larger ecosystem, whether they're connected or not. And yes, we do support fiscally sponsored projects, absolutely. We are hopeful that the support for these smaller organizations will support the leaders at these institutions. And we're hoping that the work of the Color Congress itself, by connecting these organizations and individuals that lead them together and to one another, and to building up an infrastructure of support for one another, that will by default, not by default, by design, I should say, support those leaders. I hope that I answered that question.
I would just jump in there that, I think we recognize, and it was really showed in the Beyond Inclusion research, that many of these organizations are not 501c3. They are fiscally sponsored entities. They are collectives. They have a flat hierarchical structure. They don't have a vertical structure. There may not be a director. And many of them want to stay nimble. They want to stay informal. They want to stay flexible, and they have no desire to scale or grow or become a full nonprofit organization. Those are still the organizations in our community, quite important. And we're actually going to be really prioritizing care and support for those entities with no pressure for them to scale, but simply if they do get the unrestricted grant that Sahar mentioned, that they use that in the ways that makes them more sustainable. There's no pressure, again, to grow in any one direction. We also know some are quite established C3s in place, and they're really looking to scale up and grow. And we hope that if unrestricted resources go to them, that they can use that those resources to do the work that they want to do. So I really appreciate the question about the fiscally sponsored orgs, a really key sector of our community. Another question, so glad, this is from Dawn, so glad, hey Dawn, so glad to see the support to BIPOC orgs directly. Are you planning to support BIPOC folks that work within white-led orgs?
That is, so we acknowledge the importance of supporting BIPOC leaders everywhere. The design of Color Congress is currently really prioritizing the BIPOC-led organizations and the leaders at those organizations and connecting them to one another. That said, the Congress itself is going to be determining a lot. This is going to be iterative by design. And so the field might decide that it wants to create space for leaders of color at white-led institutions to connect, to support one another. That's all, this is a work in progress. As a starting point, we are focused on the BIPOC-led institutions, and we'll see what emerges from that. Sonia, do you have any thoughts on that too?
No, I would just visibilize that, Sahar and I and our third colleague, Andrea Ayala, who is off camera but holding us down. We're a small and nimble team and trying to put our arms around this really important ecosystem. And we are also trying to lead from within and not make all of the decisions on how resources move or even membership to this Congress. So we are really leaning on the insight and experience of the Board of Advisors who you've seen today, and a second group of folks who are on our website, and we can drop the link there, and they are our design committee. And they are also members of our ecosystem, some that work in historically POC-led and serving documentary organizations, some do not. Some don't work in documentary directly at all, but have deep experience in collective organizing and collective decision-making processes. That group, that design committee, will be helping us make some decisions around the shape of the Congress, how decisions are made, how votes are cast, and also how we will begin as Congress members to direct resources when we have more pots of money to move with. So I just wanted to name that how some of these decisions are made around the way we are operationalizing our values. Sahar, Andrea, and I are really leaning on our community, our design committee, and our board of advisors to help us think through these questions. I'm going to keep moving quickly. There's a question, if we have a fiscal sponsor, does our organization have to be a formal LLC or other entity to be considered? Many of these questions are really good, and we want to make sure, if you haven't already, you've taken a look at our website. We have an FAQ page on our website that answers many of these questions, and we will have an FAQ webinar on Monday, which we invite you to attend if you are still unsure. And if you look at our website, there is an eligibility quiz, just a quick 3-question quiz that will help you determine whether or not you are eligible for those unrestricted grants. If it's still unclear and you're not quite sure, please do join us for our FAQ webinar. We will also be posting that webinar on our website for folks who cannot join us in person, but that's also going to be a great place to ask some of these questions. Especially this next question, which is about the expenditure responsibility process. Would Color Congress support helping with this accounting requirement and process? Good question.
It is a good question. The expenditure responsibility is a way we wanted to make sure that any organized group of people that are working for that have initiatives and projects that they're leading, whether it's on a volunteer basis or not, could get supported for the work that they're really putting in. And so the expenditure responsibility process is for those organizations that don't have a fiscal sponsor that still are doing really important work. We asked our fiscal sponsor what options we would have, and they explained that if they ask additional questions that ensure that they are doing their due diligence, that would already be in place when basically when you have a nonprofit structure that already ensures legal and financial due diligence. And so those expenditure responsibility questions basically ensure that due diligence is done without a fiscal sponsor. That's how I would say it. And so we will be getting much more clarity on what kinds of additional questions those are, and would be absolutely committed to supporting those organizations that do go through that process to make sure that that it could be as easeful as possible.
Thanks for that. And yes, we will drop the link to the Eventbrite shortly for the FAQ webinar. A couple more questions, and then we're going to keep moving. Thank you all for your amazing work. How sweet. Will there be any connections? Oh, I love this question. Will there be any connections made between leaders of eligible orgs for mutual support or community building? And if so, would BIPOC leaders of non-eligible orgs be able to participate? I'm a Black leader of a majority white DOC org and would love to be more formally connected with other BIPOC leaders in the industry.
Yeah, I think the response is similar to what you had said before, Sonya. We are really trying to understand how to serve this entire community and in all its permutations. And so we'll be thinking about what ways we can lean into supporting people who are working at white-led institutions. Absolutely. And seeing what kinds of connections that the organizations that are within the Color Congress can be making with those with individuals at those institutions. We don't yet know what that looks like, and this is a work in progress. We're just beginning, and well, this is all really good feedback for us to keep in mind.
Another question, are only 501c3 nonprofits and fiscally sponsored orgs eligible, or will we consider supporting mission-driven companies, for-profit companies, I'm assuming, oh, no, I'm sorry, like cooperatives or B Corps?
Yeah, I don't think we are exclusive to 501c3s. If there's any question, the expenditure responsibility process would be one that we would go through. But the truth is, I don't know enough about the structure of for-profit organizations to know how to respond to that directly, but we can flag that, and on the FAQ webinar on Monday, provide a more clear response. But at the moment, I don't really actually know how to respond to that question.
Okay, so thank you for putting a pin in that, and we'll try to have an answer for you by the FAQ webinar on Monday if you want to join in, or check back on our website for an answer to that at our FAQ webinar. Next question is, do you anticipate listing Congress members or grant applicants? I could see having a publicly accessible list of orgs seeking funding, even if they were ultimately unsuccessful, would be helpful for other organizations and companies looking to give out discretionary funds. I think that's a great idea. Mm-hmm. And certainly, the next question, there is a question here about the possible size of grants for this initial pot of money. And, that also is still in discussion, but, we are considering it may be in the range of 40 to 50K, possibly, depending on the number of organizations that get supported through this first round, maybe between 10 and 15 entities. But again, that is still being determined by our design committee and board of advisors. But I will say that, we understand that if we are prioritizing the least resourced orgs and orgs that have not received national funding for this first round of unrestricted support, that we hope that those dollars will go a long way, especially because they are unrestricted. But we know that there are many groups that we're not going to be able to support in this first round, and yet visibilizing them to national funders is going to be really key. So in addition to the grant making work we are doing, we are going to be lifting up the entities within this Congress in a number of ways. So we have some communication strategies that we are planning to make sure that the important work that many of you all are doing is being championed by Color Congress and lifted up with the eye to national funders or even regional funders who haven't yet invested in your organizations. So visibility of your work is a really core part, understanding that we're not going to be able at this stage resource the entire ecosystem. I'm going to go to about a couple more questions. How do you define documentary serving for organizations? Good one.
It's a good one. Right now, we are really attempting to lean into what the field is defining as documentary. We are really talking about nonfiction storytelling. And so right now, podcasts are being considered by folks as nonfiction storytelling, and there are intersections there. So really new media and virtual reality connections with documentary film. So we're really attempting to focus on a field that has historically been built on the stories of people of color, and intending to serve serve organizations that are attempting to write the relationship between those stories and the storytellers, and make sure that we're uplifting people of color storytellers and the leaders of color that are supporting them. So that is really the heart and center of our work. But in the places that it intersects with audio, new media, virtual reality, et cetera, that is something that we want to support and lean into. And so we'll be paying attention to those intersections.
Great. There's a question about, again, the geographic boundaries of this work. We are focused on the United States and territories. So at this stage, Color Congress is not going to be broadening its scope outside of the United States, although we know that many of our peers are working internationally. The Congress members are going to be organizations that are based and working in the US and territories. They may have members that are international, but if they're based in other countries, they would not be part of the Color Congress or eligible for the grants. Again, the intervention is really around the chronic and historic disinvestment in POC-led and POC-serving organizations in our documentary industry. So that's why there's a special focus for the domestic industry. Is there a requirement for how long the organization has been operating for? Would it be eligible if it's just starting out? Absolutely. We know new collectives and entities, especially in this tumultuous period, where everyone's pulling up their sleeves and gathering strength. This is a really incredible and important moment. So when I said there were 90 organizations in this ecosystem, that was probably when we started. There's probably 92 by now. It's a growing community, and we invite all members as groups are birthed to join the Congress. Last couple of questions. Will there be capacity building and support for organizations that are under-resourced convenings to build collective power? Sahar, you want to jump in?
Yes, that is a part of what we'll be focused on. The small grants that program that we have launched on Friday is one part of the work. We imagine later this summer, we are thinking about, we will be opening up a second fund that is focused on supporting collaborative collective work. And what I mean by that is there's a pool of funds that the field will get to decide on how to direct. And we imagine that initially that pool of funds will be used to support all kinds of sustainability issues, how to support these organizations to become solvent and basically strengthen their infrastructure at the onset. And the reason we think that is because in the follow-up research that we did to the Beyond Inclusion report, we heard a lot about the need to focus on sustainability and the need to focus on those kinds of issues. And so that's initially where we think that the focus will be, but we'll see.
Great. There is a question about, are you funding documentaries which live or exist within larger installations? Really important point. The work is not, Color Congress is not supporting individual documentaries or individual filmmakers. The work is really around organizations or entities that support filmmakers so that they can create their work. So the intervention here is on the organizational level, not on the film or filmmaker level. But we're hoping entering at that stage and building some support for those organizations that are incubators for so many films and filmmakers is the right intervention for us to make. Lastly is, I think, let's see, how can we connect academics to this ecosystem? They're often not part of nonprofit organizations, but are an important resource.
That's a great question. And I'm committed to being honest in that this is still a work in progress and I don't yet know. But we know what our core foundational work is, and I imagine that there are going to be a lot of important intersections that we have to make with academics, with individuals that are working at white-led institutions, as we've heard, and a number of other intersections as well. And I think we'll know more as we get further into this work, but it's another important note and another important thing for us to be thinking about.
Okay, and last question, is there a role for the Color Congress to advocate for new BIPOC leaders leading previously white-led organizations who are working to dismantle embedded cultures of white hubris and white supremacy within organizations? I think that was similar answer to the question earlier. At this stage, there isn't a mechanism to support BIPOC leaders in historically white-led institutions, simply because the intervention is about turning our gaze and support and resources towards the organizations that are not working to transform, but have been doing that work consistently and under-resourced. So that's, again, why the intervention is specifically targeted to POC-led and serving organizations, the organizations that historically are underfunded. But certainly we think about our peers in white-led organizations and are thinking about ways that we can offer support. And I would say that Color Congress isn't necessarily built to be an advocacy organization in terms of how it advocates with the larger industry. It is meant to be an infrastructure building organization for the existing ecosystem of POC-led and serving organizations. I would just say the metaphor that I always go to is, maybe because I'm a Cali girl and grew up in the desert, I think of our ecosystem as a beautiful desert with blossoming succulents, and also dry from attention and investment from the greater field. And we are an incredible ecosystem that has done so much with so little for so long. It's really key that we turn our attention to water this field as much and nurture the leaders and uplift the work as much as possible, given that so many other organizations are focused on helping the industry at large transform. So we are turning our gaze inward, but certainly going to be part of the conversations and energy around industry transformation. And with that, I am going to ask we have a few more surprises for you. But thank you for all your good questions. I'm going to invite our other board advisor member, Andres Cediel, and I'm going to ask him to join us. Andres is a documentary filmmaker and professor at UC Berkeley's Graduate School of Journalism. And Andres, do you want to say a few words about the role you see Color Congress playing, in particular with the film students, the next gen that's coming up, that you currently support in your work?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everybody. My name is Andres Cediel. I use he, him pronouns. I identify as Latino. I have a salt and pepper goatee and some curly hair tied back in a bun. I'm wearing a magenta African print shirt with butterflies on it. And I'm coming to you from Huchun in Saklan lands in the San Francisco East Bay. And one of the things when I was watching this presentation and all the networks on the graphics at the beginning, what stood out to me was the name Lonnie Ding, which came up on a couple of different slides. Lonnie was my first instructor, my first mentor. She was really the person who showed me not only the passion and the joy that goes into the filmmaking process, but really the seriousness that you have to take when you're doing this work to uplift your community and your ancestors. So I'm eternally grateful to Lonnie, and I just want to elevate her name in this space. I'm lucky enough now to be teaching at UC Berkeley where she was, and feeling how the legacy continues, and really inspired by all the talented young people who are coming up wanting to be filmmakers, learning this craft. And it's really exciting for me to see what Color Congress is doing to build this ecosystem, water the succulents, so that when they start taking over, we have a lot to look forward to when it blossoms. So thank you very much for this time and for the space. Back to you, Sonya and Sahar.
Thank you, Andres, and thanks for keeping my metaphor going. We are just going to roll with the beautiful succulent garden. And thank you for joining our board. We're really lucky to have you in the home of Lonnie Ding and Marlon Riggs, hallowed ground over there at UC Berkeley. And we're just, and many, many more. Carrie Lausanne, just beautiful, beautiful leaders that have come out of that institution. So we wanted to next bring a few more friends into the party before we close. And I'd like to have them come on screen and I will introduce them as they join us. So go ahead and bring them into the room. And who we'll see today is our friends. Here they are. They're starting to show up. Our friends and our colleagues, the folks who we are leading shoulder to shoulder with in this good work and this good fight. And as they join us, I'm going to just introduce them. We will be joined for these moments with Don Young, the Center for Asian and American Media's Director of Programs. We'll be joined by Marcia Smith. Hello, Marcia, President and co-founder of Firelight. We'll be joined by Iaba Boyd, founder and director of Brown Girls Doc Mafia. We will be joined by Nihad Kader, program director of the Black Star Film Festival. Tracy Rector, let's bring you back, coming now repping Nia Taro Foundation. Tara Darabji coming back into the conversation and repping the Center for Cultural Power. So friends, welcome. And you know, we are just honored to be the newest kid on the block in this community. Oh, I'm sorry, and Becky Lichtenfeld from Inmont Foundation. Yay, okay, we see you all. So we are really excited to be in community with all of you. You know, we both stand on your shoulders and stand at your shoulder, side by side with you in this work. And in many ways, I think we reached out at different iterations of either Sahar's research or the design of this initiative, reached out to many of you to advise us on this intervention. Is this the right intervention? Is this the right moment? Is this the right way to support our peers and our colleagues? We wanted your insight, but really we wanted your blessing. And we humbly asked for it and got such great feedback about how this work could be useful and how to make sure that what we're bringing does more good than harm or disruption, and that we can really help this ecosystem be an incredible force for change. So we are grateful to the words of advice and wisdom that you have already shared, and we're going to offer the floor to you to say anything to our larger community that's listening in today. So Don from CAM, I'd like to invite you to share first.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here today. I'm sorry, I tried to download the background, so I couldn't figure it out. But you know, when Cam first heard about Color Congress, we were really excited and thrilled. You know, deeply appreciative of the work that Sahar and Sonya have done through the years, and we couldn't ask for an organization that's more necessary now, right? I think, you know, as there are forces who don't want our communities to move forward, we need to figure out how to fortify each other and help build the next generation. And I think, you know, this has been a long time coming, but really we at CAM are just proud to be a part of this, and hopefully we can be helpful and be in service and be in partners and great conspirators together.
Love that word. Thank you, Don. Much respect. Marcia from Firelight.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Yep, I'm Marcia Smith. My pronouns are she, her. I'm coming to you from Lenape land in Harlem, New York. I am super glad to be here. I don't have the right to be proud of Sahar and Sonya, and yet I feel pride and gratitude for their partnership and colleagueship over many years, and could not be happier with where you two are taking this organization and the field. I too think that we need the voices that you're going to nurture and raise. We need them critically at this moment in which we are all kind of coming off the high of expectations of change and crashing into the realities of resistance to change. We need to keep broadening this field. We need to raise the voices of young people, new people, people who have been marginalized. We need more people to raise questions about authorship, about the power and voice of BIPOC storytellers and BIPOC organizational leaders. We need to push back against the instinct to marginalize our voices and inadvertently constrain our power. First of all, we have to not do that to ourselves. And so I think this organization is going to play a really important role as, and I love the constellations in the beginning. I saw my story, Stanley Nelson's story, Firelight story in every stage of that. I saw many touch points of those constellations. And now I'm really proud to see Firelight being a touch point for other organizations and other leaders and other people. That's what I want. And that's what I am proud to support in Color Congress. And I'm thrilled. And as I say, I have no right to be, but I'm also proud.
We're proud. We're proud as well. We're proud as well to be part of the Firelight fam. I mean, we could go on and on about Firelight's role in this ecosystem. Just a towering institution. So thank you, Marcia. And of course, a mic drop as always. So appreciate you. Nihad, do you want to come on board and say a few words?
Hi, goodness, how do I follow Marcia? Nihad Khader, festival director of Black Star Film Festival. My pronouns are she and her. And I come from Lenape territory as well, known today as Philadelphia. And, you know, Philadelphia is the home of Scribe Video Center and the home of Black Star. And so we know very intimately the power of these organizations in what they can do for the city, for the city's residents. And, you know, Scribe has such a deep history. And these organizations really do exist all over. And we're just so excited about the leadership of Sonya and Sahar through this process. Especially now, as Marcia said, and especially their focus on sustainability and infrastructure is so incredibly needed, as the report indicated. And so we're just really excited to be part of this historic moment as well. And I also want to say that I'm on the design committee of Color Congress, and what an honor it was to be trusted with such a beautiful responsibility. So yeah, just kudos to everybody who's doing the work, and especially to you, Sonya and Sahar, tipping my hat.
Thank you. We could go on and on about Black Star and to your leadership there. I'm going to send it next to Tara, who's also on our design committee and a board of advisors. Tara, do you want to say a word?
Yeah, I too am just in awe of the leadership of Sonya and Sahar. Been honored to be building with Sonya, and just wonderful to see both of their leadership in this, and the care and the vision at such a critical moment. And, you know, as a filmmaker myself, it's the small institutions and community that get you moving and engage. And from someone who's been doing this work for decades now, those are the institutions that don't have access to the funding and the resources, and just the incredible power of storytellers. Folks know that, and that's why it's been so dominated by the white male gaze. And you can't counter something like that through a top-down solution. And the need to really grow something thoughtfully with care at the grassroots in partnership is really, really hard, and it's really vital, and it's healing, and it's medicine for us all. And it's just so needed. So grateful to be in partnership with both of you and learning from this incredible group as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Tara. And we're grateful to be in community with the Center for Cultural Power, our cousin over there, building its own constellation of BIPOC artists of color across the country. So it's an honor. It's an honor. I want to send it over next to Becky Lichtenfeld over at Inmot Foundation, an old and good, strong friend of ours. Becky.
Thank you so much. Becky, she, her, my pronouns coming from Lenape land. And so Inmot supports organizations and films and projects that challenge and disrupt gender oppression and while championing justice and human rights. And really now, one of the reasons why I'm so proud to sort of just be a small part of this ecosystem and support you all is because we care deeply about how things are done in addition to what's being done. And so your leadership, you both bring so much integrity and wisdom to everything you do, and thoughtfulness, and the way you talk about moving away from extractive storytelling, increasing access and to funding and creating hubs. And that one of the things you want to do is measure your success by relationships. So I feel I'm just so excited by the work you're doing, and happy to be to learn from it and be an ally however possible.
Thank you, Becky. We're going to go to Tracy and Niabo, but I think Marcia wants to circle back in. Marcia, do you want to jump back in?
Just briefly, I'm sorry. I did want to add that Firelight will be making a contribution to Color Congress. I just want to say that I think it's important for us to make that gesture, although it is not certainly as much as we would hope it could be, because we think it's so important and it is so aligned with Firelight's mission. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Same with Inmot Foundation, also financial support, as well as however else we can be an ally.
Sorry, and just to add Black Star as well.
Anyone else?
Turn two.
And too, I also messed up on that message too. I was first one up. I'm sorry.
The Center for Cultural Power is on board as well with financial support.
Yeah, I got to say it first, but really I wasn't.
Now it's a party. Now it's a party. Tracy, thank you. Thank you all. Tracy, and then we're going to close with Iabo.
Sure. I don't have much to say other than you're the aunties I wish I had coming up in this space 20 plus years ago as a DIY filmmaker who's just trying to figure it all out. And as many of us all do, we wear all the hats, we do all the work. And, we make the sacrifices because it's more than about ourselves. It's about a bigger picture, bigger community, and for future generations. So I refuse to believe that we're in just a moment with the power of Indigenous storytelling right now, and with Black Star, and with Firelight and all the amazing orgs represented here and spoken into this space. I feel that we are our ancestors' dream manifest, and it's happening. So thank you for this.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Tracy. And thanks to the support of Nia Taro. And last but not least, Iabo Boyd. Brown Girls Doc Mafia in the house.
Thank you so much. I am so, my heart is beating. I'm so personally moved by this whole session. I'm definitely a fangirl in the chat. I'm so proud of you guys. I'm gonna try to pull it together. Iabo Boyd, she, her, Brown Girls Doc Mafia. Grateful to have a small part in supporting Sonya and Sahar's work with Color Congress, with a tiny but meaningful contribution from BGDM, and to be in conversation with you all in its initial development. So thank you for including me. BGDM wasn't listed in the constellation of organizations because before 2016, I was trapped in a different universe, you know, being tokenized and isolated and neglected in white-led institutions, like many of us. I wasn't aware of the beautiful legacy of parents and aunties and siblings and cousins that were holding space for me and for so many unknowing others elsewhere. Finding my way into this solar system, this constellation of absolute stars who saw, understood, and lifted up my vision, including Leda Limbaugh, Sonya Childress, Marsha Smith at Firelight Media, Leo Chang and Grace Slade at ADOC, Leslie Fields Cruz, Black Public Media, Chiwei Yang and Lauren Pabst, Chiwei at Ford, Lauren and Garther, and many more. This community has changed my life personally and has enabled me and over 5,000 Brown Girls Doc Mafia members to stand on the shoulders of these powerful individuals and collectives and organizations and companies that really enabled BGDM to break through and be where we are today. So thank you, Color Congress, for mapping us, for resourcing us, for putting us all on this rocket ship of a next chapter in this amazing, incredible, beautiful legacy. It's an honor to celebrate you all today. Thanks.
Now you got me going. Iabo. I mean, you know, we bow down to you and to all of you. I mean, so much love for you, Iabo, and what Brown Girls Doc Mafia, the incredible community, the fierce, loving community that you have nurtured in such a short amount of time is unprecedented. And, you know, Brown Girls, like so many of, like all of your organizations, are the lighthouse. They are the shelter in the storm. They are the rock to hold on to in a really turbulent industry, in a really turbulent time in our country. You know, not lost on us that so much of this collective organizing is happening at a time when our families and our communities are going through it. You all continue to pour so much of yourselves into filmmakers and peers and films and your community that you love, that you want seen. It's incredible work. And I hope that you all feel the love reflected back at you in the chat. This love in the chat is for y'all. So I just, you know, we bow down to all of you in the chat and all of you on screen right now. You all are really holding all of us up. So we just, you know, big up yourselves and, you know, get a drink after this, you know, something, just enjoy this moment because we really honor you. We really, really honor all of you. And we thank you for your contributions and your support. It's lifting us off the ground as we launch this organization. Yeah, dance party, let's do it. So I want to pass it over to Sahar and we're going to close things up. Thank you.
Ooh. Iabo, thank you for bringing it. I'm glad it was at the end because I wasn't sure I was going to be able to pull it together. But this is a dream come true to see you guys all here. I'm inspired by you. I see you. I hope you see us seeing you and being inspired by you and led by you. I'm grateful for the support that you're all giving. And I can't wait to meet you out there. You're already in here. I have a job to do here, so I'm going to get serious back to the job. We hope that you'll sign up to receive future communications from us. As we mentioned, we have an FAQ webinar on Monday about the open call. So if you think you'd like to apply, we hope you'll join. And I believe the RSVP link will be added again. As I mentioned before, we only told a sliver of a story. There's a lot more to tell. And so if you have a piece of that story that you didn't put in the chat or that you want to reinforce, please shoot us an email. We'd love to hear from you. And or just reach out and let us know what you think and how you think today went. We've gotten a lot of great feedback already. It's beautiful. If you were a funder or you know of a funder who may want to invest in this ecosystem and help build the pot of resources that supports their work, please put us in touch. We are still fundraising. So really with that, I'm going to pass the mic back over to Sonya.
Thank you, Sahar, and thank you for inviting me to join you at your side on this journey. It's an honor to water this beautiful field that has given us so much. To be able to give back is an honor. And to do it at your side with your brilliant leadership is an honor. I'm thanking you, and I'm thanking our beautiful advisory board, Tara Darabji, Chloe Walters-Wallace. You weren't here with us, but we felt you and we heard your words. Kenny Keda, Cornelius Moore, Tracy Rector, Chiwe Yang, and Andres Cediel. Our design committee members who were in the chats, we thank you for joining us. Our Color Congress colleague, Andrea Ayala, for holding us down on the back end. Felicia Chanko, our producer. Our beautiful interpreters, ASL interpreters, Ashley McHenry, who you're seeing now, and Andrea Lust. Our CART transcriber, beautiful Karen Schmieder. Our colleagues at Sundance who allowed us to have some space here at the festival, and for you, all of you, for joining us and all of the love that you've shown us, the rigor that you're bringing to your questions for us, the good wishes. We hear and see all of it, and we keeping an open door and an open heart as we embark on this work. So please, we are just a step away. Reach out at any time. And with that, we thank you. And please stay safe and stay well.